I think will set the frame for the story. And by the way, I really dislike talking about myself. So the sooner we can get through the story, the better, and open up for discussion. Because I just have a sense of uh, shyness when it comes to just myself. But let me ask everyone a question here. Why are you here? Just quick. Someone throw out the answer. Why are you here right here?
To learn something.
Okay. We're here to learn something. In kahwa, the grounding, you come here, you learn something, you drink some tea, some coffee. It's good times. Okay. Why are you in Herndon, Virginia? Just go one step bigger. Why are you in Herndon? Quick, anyone?
God put me here.
Okay, God put me here. Is that a why or is that a how? Maybe. All right, we're gonna come back to that. But is there another like this? Did anyone come here for work, or like did anyone's parents raise them here? You know, or did anyone here studying at university, or so there's some other reasons. Right here, I'm studying. You know, like I go to high school here, I go to college here, I got a job here. That's why I'm okay. Let's just go one step bigger. Why are you in America? Why are you in Virginia? Or America? Why are you in America?
Safety.
Safety. Okay. A lot of parents move their kids here. Prosperity. Well, that's going out the window. Dollar's crashing, by the way. All right. Uh, move them here, right? Because quote unquote back home, it's dangerous, it's unstable, and prosperity. You know, the economy isn't good in other places. It's supposed to be better here. There's reasons why you're in America. There's reasons why you're in this coffee shop right now. There's reasons why you're in this town. There's reasons why you're in this city. There's reasons why you're in this country. One step more. Why are you in this world?
That was a test.
Okay, it's a test. All right. Huh?
Worship Allah.
To worship Allah. Okay.
Allah said so.
Allah said so. Okay. Did anyone just kind of like pause for a moment when they heard that? Like, wait a minute. Did anyone pause? Did you have like a oh wait? Because you go from coffee shop to town to state to country. You've got a reason. You've got a reason. You've got a reason. But then once you say world, suddenly it's a shift, right? It's a little bit of a shift, right? And so that's a question a lot of people never ask. All right? That's a question a lot of people never ask. And when they do ask it, they will go in one or two directions. Okay? They will either say, I'm in this world because of a coincidence, because my mom and dad got together one day, okay, and something happened, and that's why. But when I said, why are you in this room? You didn't say because I walked here. That's how you got here. You see, a lot of people confuse the how with the why, right? You have a reason. I'm here to learn, right? It's a real reason, okay? A lot of people, when they get to this thing about the world, why am I even in this world? I didn't will it myself, right? They go in one of two directions. They say it's either a coincidence, we're all just a product of random evolution. It's a coincidence, there's no reason, okay, everything's random, and you go down that route, or you go down another route, and you say, I'm here for a reason. And that reason must be bigger than anything I could have come up with. Okay? Let's just frame the discussion like that. And I'll go back in time. When I was 16 years old, okay, let's even go back before that. I was born in Iran. But I was born during a revolution. Have I heard of the Iranian Revolution? 1979, 80, 81, okay? Something happened to Iran at that time. Many Iranians who were secular atheist, agnostic. They don't believe in anything. Communist, whatever. They left Iran. They went to Europe. They went to America. They went to other places. My parents were like that, agnostic, atheist, and we came to America. Okay, and so I was raised here, not as a Muslim. I was raised just like any other American. You know, if you could say like what was my religion, it was just kind of like American religion. I don't know. You know, it's just kind of like whateverism. You know, just go with the flowism. You know, that's kind of how most Americans grow up, right? I had a lot of friends who were Christian, so I went to church a lot as a kid. They had basketball camps. They had a lot of fun stuff. So I went to church. They had, Boy Scouts. I went to church a lot when I was growing up as a kid, right? And I grew up with Christmas trees, not because my parents were Christian. They didn't believe in anything. But it's just because they saw other people were doing it. Easter eggs and, didn't grow up with anything Islamic at all, right? What I knew about Islam was probably Muhammad goes with Islam and Jesus goes with Christianity. That was the extent of my knowledge, right? So, but I developed a why early on in my life for why am I in this world? You know what my why was? It was to be an NBA basketball player. That was my why. And you see, I'm short, right? So, but that was such a passionate why of mine. I fell in love with basketball. It was everything I ate. It was everything I drank. It was everything I did. When I got into high school, I got set that this is why I'm in this world. It is to play basketball. That's my why. I would wake up 5 a.m. in the morning. Couldn't drive. I didn't have a license. Drive my bike to the YMCA, practice. Skip lunch at school, go to the gym, practice. After school, practice. And go on the craziest diet. I became a personal trainer just because I just lived in the gym. It's all I did. My freshman year of high school, basketball tryouts, I'll never forget October 15th, basketball tryouts, right? I got cut. And devastated, but you know what? I was passionate. This is my why. So the next year, I worked even harder, right? Train like crazy, right? I memorized the nutrition facts of almost every food item you can think of. That's how strict I was about diet. Ask me any food, I'll tell you how much carbs, and I still haven't memorized. Protein, fat. Sophomore year comes around, tryouts, right? Guess what happens? I got cut. Junior year, high school. This is still my why. Okay. And same thing, just super competitive, whatever, do whatever I can. But junior year comes around, I got cut again. And it was around my junior year, senior year, I even changed schools my senior year to just try out another school. But around that time, I was looking for a little side hustle job. And my brother knew these Libyans who worked a pizza shop. So I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky. Anyone knows anything about Kentucky? It's all about UK basketball. And under the stadium, they had these little shops, before the game, go get something to eat. I found a job in those pizza shops. And it was run by the Libyans. And they love basketball. We talk basketball all the time. Non-stop basketball, non-stop Jordan, non-stop this. And so they befriended me. I became good friends with them super fast. One day, they asked me, and so now I was probably 16 years old at this time. Have I ever been to a mosque? I said no. They said, do you want to go? It's Friday, we're going, do you want to go? I said, sure. Now, before this, I dabbled into Christianity, I dabbled into Buddhism, I dabbled into Taoism, because these were Eastern philosophies that really sort of helped you with self-control and with mind control. And again, I thought that was really helpful for basketball. Right? So it's all about basketball, right? Saad's got some jokes already. He's thinking of. I know he's thinking of. So he can lay those on me later. But yeah. So they were like, "We're going. Do you want to go?" Now I'll say something here because I want to come back to this. Matter of fact, we can have a discussion about this right now. I'll say this: had they not befriended me, I probably would not have gone. They knew I knew nothing about Islam. I don't pray. I don't believe in any arkan of iman. Okay, I don't have anything like that, right? But they befriended me. And I truly felt like they were my friends. Has anyone here ever heard you're not allowed to have non-Muslim friends? Have I heard that? But you haven't heard that? Right? All right, okay, that تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم أولياء, right? That تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Don't take the Jews and Christians as friends. That's not a correct translation. But yeah, you've heard of that, okay? But I'll tell you, had they not befriended me, I would not have gone to the mosque. I wouldn't have trusted. Okay, and I think it's a really sort of problematic way of thinking about dawah. That when you give dawah to people, you have to sort of lecture to them, and you have to sort of teach them and convince them. It's a convincing exercise, right? And you have to convince them that what they believe is wrong and what you believe is right. You kind of have to defeat them, right? Everybody seen the dawah scene on YouTube? It's disastrous. It is absolutely. It's like an MMA fight. It's like MMA fights. It's all about submission, right? You just got to submit your opponent, right, and destroy them, right? And if they did that to me, I would not have gone to the masjid. But you know what I felt from them? I just felt like I was their people, and they cared about me. And they're going to the masjid. They want to invite me. I'm going to go with them. In fact, my people. I'll talk about that real quick before I continue the story. Okay. Because we're talking about anyone who's come late. We're talking about the tug in the pool of Islam. So this week, Shah wanted me to talk about how I was pulled to Islam on a personal note. Okay. Every prophet in the Quran essentially addressed their people with the address of Ya Qawmi. Do I know what that means? What does Ya Qawmi mean? Somebody tell me what Ya Qawmi means. وَيَا قَوْمِ مَا لِي أَدْعُوكُمْ إِلَى النَّجَاةِ وَتَدْعُونَنِي إِلَى النَّارِ وَيَا قَوْمِ. What does it mean? My people. That's it. So the Prophet Hud, the Prophet Saleh, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Musa ﷺ, many prophets in the Quran address their people as my people. But the people that they were talking to were polytheists, they were drunks, they were sinners, but they still said, my people. You see what I'm getting at here? Can you look at Bob down the street who drinks beer at night, watches wrestling or does whatever he does, and knows nothing about Islam and watches Fox News endlessly? Do you think you could look at him in the eye and say, that's my people? I got one yes. Okay, be honest. Let's just raise hands. Let's be honest. I got one yes. Could you look Bob in the eye and say, you're my people? Less than half, way less than half the crowd here. Okay? That's honest. That's good. But let me ask you something. Why would Bob or Janet or Jennifer or Chris or whoever, Why would they listen to anything you have to say if they don't feel like you're looking at their best interest in mind, that you're looking at them as your own people and what's good for them? Why would they listen to you? You know? So I felt like I was their people. And that's how they would talk to me, right? Like, hey, we got you, let's go do this, let's go do that. And they befriended me. In fact, I would say that just friendships and bringing non-Muslims, but here's the caveat, by the way. Sorry, we're going to continue, but this is an important tangent. When you befriend non-Muslims, here's the caveat, here's the rule. You have to be the one who sets the cultural standards and paradigms, and you have to be the inviter. You have to be the one who sets the atmosphere and the tone, right? And they're going along for the ride, right? It can't be that they're the one inviting you to everything, and you just go to everything that they do, no matter what, because they don't have guidance yet, right? But I can't tell you how many times I've seen people come to Islam just because they hang around Muslims, and Muslims have clean entertainment. When it comes time to pray, they pray, okay? They're respectful to their family, to their elders, and they see that. And just basic Islamic environment and ambiance. Basic ambiance, they just see the ambiance, and they're just tugged and they're pulled to it. I was in that pizza shop. I just saw these were three brothers, and their dad would come every now and then. I just saw the ambiance of culture. They would go in the back. There was a little corner, and they would go and pray, right? And there was a sister who worked there too, and she converted, and she would go and pray, you know. And the whole time, the talk was basketball. It was never about Islam. It was never, barely. It was just like little drops here and there, little drops of salt. The meal was just, let's just talk about basketball, right? Am I out of time? How much time? How much time do I have? What up? 20 minutes? Okay. Anyway, so we went to the masjid. All right. I'd never been to a masjid. I have no idea what to expect. I think it's going to be like church. We go in, there's a small building with wudu stations. And right off the bat, you know, sometimes Arab brothers, they're just a little too direct. You know, right off the bat, we go into the wudu station and he says, you got to wash your feet. That was the oddest thing to me. But I was like, okay. Because, you know, you grow up, every American is just kind of like, whatever, you know. So I was just in whatever mode, you know. I was like, okay, whatever, you know. So wash face, I just watch him and then wash feet. And, okay, he does that, I do this, okay. And I have no idea what we're doing or why we're doing it. He didn't explain anything to me. And then we go into the next building, and it was an old house converted to a mosque. And there was an imam, Palestinian imam, talking in Arabic. Within a few seconds, I just zoned out. And he was talking in English, but with a thick accent and a lot of Arabic on the side. Mostly, I just sat down and looked around, just looked at other Muslims, and I, you know, I was just like, okay. And then before I knew it, everyone stood up. I have no idea what the imam said during the khutbah. I don't have a dramatic story for you. I didn't see a light. Okay, there's nothing. No, I don't have like Yusuf Islam has a really cool convert story. You know, like he was in the middle of the sea and a wave came and picked him up. Right, I don't have anything like. I'm sorry. It's really boring. But everyone got up, and again, I thought it'd be like church, so I just sat in the middle, you know, and I had no idea. So I got up. And I just tried to act like I knew what I was doing, and I fit in because I thought, okay, they're going to find out that I'm not one of them, and it's going to be bad. And I had my own stereotypes, right? I mean, like I knew nothing about Islam, nothing. Okay, and so and the guy who brought me in, I didn't even know where he was. He was gone. Like so they stood up. Before I knew it, they went into sujood. And I was just following the guy next to me. and I went into sujood. And I remember that sujood. What I remember was I felt safe. And that was interesting because I wasn't in any danger, you know? But I felt a little relief because the whole time I was frustrated, I was a little frustrated because I didn't understand what was going on. This guy's like, just wash your feet. Didn't explain anything. And he's like, just wash your face. Didn't explain anything. Okay? The imam was talking 70% Arabic. It seemed like 30, I didn't understand his English. But you know what? I understood sujood. I knew exactly what that meant. And before this, I had this cosmic itch. Like, I told you the basketball story, right? I was like, I've been cut from this team so many times. If it's not basketball, why am I here? You know? And that itch, that cosmic itch, it was building up inside of me, right? And I tried Buddhism. I tried Taoism. I went to church camp. You ever been to church? Nobody's been to church. Why am I asking? You literally, you go to church sessions like 7 times a day, okay? And someone gets on the stage and hallelujah, and people run around and they got the Holy Ghost, and like I did that, okay? Like I tried a lot of stuff, but sujood hit something. I knew the language of sujood. Pause here. We believe what Allah says in the Quran. I didn't know this then, okay? But what we believe is that before every human being was brought into this world, before every human being was brought in this celestial realm, Allah took the souls of Adam. وَأَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِهِمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى. He took the soul of every single human being who would ever come into existence. This is in the Quran, in Surah Al-Araf. And Allah took witness from every soul and said, am I not your Lord? And every soul said, indeed. Allah then says, we took this witness from you so that on the day of judgment, you would not say, we didn't know anything about this. So what we believe is that in every human being, there's a fitrah. Okay? There's a natural, it's like a spiritual DNA. It will ignite. You know, you have DNA molecules, they don't activate. Some genes don't activate until you're in the right environment. You know that? You have trillions of genetic molecules, but some of them will activate in a certain environment. And they'll produce the mRNA that produces the proteins, that produces the phenotypes, that produces whatever hormones and appearances that come about because you're in a certain environment. Had you not been in that environment, that would not have happened. Sujood ignited something of my spiritual DNA. And so after that, I went to the public library and I checked out a Quran. It was Yusuf Ali's translation, okay? And back then, that's pretty much all you had. This was like, I think this was like 1998, 99, okay? And I could not put it down. What I felt like, I felt like a fish swimming in truth. That's what I felt like reading the Quran. I felt like a fish swimming in truth. And when I didn't read the Quran, I felt like a fish out of water. And I would stay up till 12 o'clock at night. I'd go to school the next day sleepy because I just could not stop reading. And I got to a verse. This book speaks about you in truth. And that hit me so hard because I felt like every single verse was speaking to me. And so my initial sort of like becoming Muslim, I didn't take Shahada. No one told me to do that either. Again, every time I go work at that pizza shop, we just talk basketball. They didn't really give me any dawah. They didn't know much about Islam themselves. I mean, they did, okay, but they weren't like scholarly. They were just like good brothers, and they just wanted to get along and have a good time and be friends, right? But they kept their prayers. They kept that Islamic ambiance. But beyond that, like I didn't know what I was doing. So some days I'd pray 2 rak'ahs for the whole day. Some days I'd pray 4. I knew there were 5 prayers, but I didn't know what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to. And I thought the only time Muslims prayed in the masjid was Friday prayer. So one day I was driving home and it was like around Asr time. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just like stop and pray at the mosque? So like this, because all I would do is 2 rak'ahs, because that's all I saw at Jummah. That's all I figured Muslims did is just 2 rak'ahs, and I didn't know what I was saying, but I would just do that. And it was Asr time, and a bunch of people started coming, and I got scared and left. Because I thought there was a meeting or something. Again, I'm not a member, I don't know. But I had a friend in high school, and so he was a Muslim, and I asked him, hey man, I went to the mosque the other day. There was a bunch of people who came around like 4 o'clock. Like, what was that? Was there some event or something? I was like, no man, that was Asr prayer. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, we pray 5 times a day. I was like, 5 times a day? Every day? He's like, yeah, every day. It's like, every day of the week? He's like, every day. I was like, holidays? Like, like even throughout the year? He was like, yeah, So I went to the masjid. I started going to the masjid a lot. And guess who picked me up right off the bat? Jamaat Tablighi brothers. Everybody know who the Tablighi brothers are? Okay? All right? These brothers, may Allah bless them. They don't leave anyone behind. And they go from masjid to masjid. They're kind of like missionaries of Ben Bayaz and like, but I learned the basics of Islam from them. I started going to other communities with them, staying in other masajid for a week at a time, going around, talking to people. And yeah, I mean, I started to learn my basics from them. And then Ramadan came around, and Ramadan, like, I'd never been to Tarawih. Until this point, I actually had not heard a true Imam recite the Quran. I only heard the Imam at the masjid recite, but his recitation was not good at all. But for Tarawih at the masjid, they brought an Imam who was like very good tajweed. And that was the first time I heard the Quran as it was like supposed to be. And so it hit me so hard. I was like, I have to have this. So at that time, MP3 players came out. Some of y'all are 20 years old, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, let me explain, because Saad, what's an MP3 player? Explain to me.
I'm a little too young for that.
Okay. All right, you see this? Imagine something like 5 times bigger than this, okay, or heavier, right? Nothing but a hard drive, and then it's like a DOS operating system, and it's up and down, and you could hit songs. I downloaded the Quran. It was Abu Bakr al-Shatri's recitation.
That's my recitation.
And I could not stop listening to it. I was like, I didn't even know there was this thing where people like recited the Quran. It was so beautiful. And I started to memorize. And around that time, so the Libyans, I mentioned Libya. The Libyans, when Gaddafi started persecuting a lot of people, a lot of them left. And one of the places where they made base was in Lexington, Kentucky. So there was a huge population, not huge, relative to other places in the country, a lot of Libyans in Lexington, Kentucky. And one of them happened to be a sheikh who graduated from Azhar. His name was Muhammad Nashnush. And he started giving halaqat in the masjid of the Quran. And I was just so mesmerized with the Quran and him because he looked like something torn out of a history book. He was blind, he was in his 80s. He didn't speak any English, but he was like a PhD and came out of Azhar, and I would just go and sit and just look at him. I wasn't in the halaqah. I just wanted to look at his face because there was something about his, it's just something that scholars, they just have, like real scholars, they just have this nur, this haiba, right? This charisma. After some time, his son who was working, he was like, why don't you join? I was like, no, I'm too scared. So I joined And he was like, read. So at that point, like I knew the alphabet. So I learned, so got one of these books, Learn Arabic on Your Own. I learned the alphabet. So I was trying to sound out the alphabet as I read. It took like 5 minutes to read one verse. He was like, stop. Go read this again. He corrected me. He's like, come back tomorrow, and then we'll read it again. Came back tomorrow. I read it pretty well, memorized it. He was like, okay, here's a couple more verses. Come back tomorrow. That kept going on. That went on for about 10 years. And I memorized the Quran with him. So after a few juz, I was going really fast. And I went to Egypt in the interim, came back. At some point, I went to Syria for a few months and came back. And then I was actually able to talk with him, his teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Mishmish. And I was able to actually communicate with him. So we did grammar, and we did some fiqh. And then I went to Egypt again, and I studied with some people there, and I came back. And then just one thing kind of led to another. And, and I started to gain a footing, I guess, like in terms of like knowledge. And I got into med school, and then I was so passionate about Islamic studies, I thought I made a mistake, because I was reading Imam Nawawi's book on Adab al-Quran. In an introduction of this book, Adab al-Quran, Imam Nawawi, he says, I was thinking about becoming a doctor, but I decided not to because I wouldn't have any time for true scholarship. And I read that, and I started crying. And I said, I made a mistake. So I went to Sheikh Nashnush, and and I told him, I was like, I think I got into med school, but I think I made a mistake. I just want to go study Sharia and quit med school, and that's it. And so he said, he turned and looked at me. Remember, he was blind, but he knew where I was speaking from, so he turned and looked at me. And I'll never forget what he said, like in this like really thick accent, because he knew a little English, but in his Libyan accent, he said, "You are stupid." And he encouraged me not to quit. He said, "No, this is good. Continue, and you can continue like studying on the side." And so that's kind of like been my life since, and so that's kind of my story. So when you talk about like, okay, how did I like? Because this grounding series is about the pull of Islam, and what pulls people to Islam. I think what pulled me to Islam, and we'll end here in just a couple minutes, so we can have a discussion. What pulled me to Islam was something very different, I think, than what would pull a lot of people to Islam. Okay, what pulled me to Islam was this. Again, remember I said my why, my purpose, I thought was to just play basketball. But it was such a depressing purpose. If you make that purpose anything about dunya, you will end up in depression. Because no matter what you make that purpose be, it will end. It will end. And whatever you put into it will end. If you make your purpose, being a CEO of at some point the board will fire you. At some point, you're gonna have to retire. Then what? You know how many people get depressed when they retire? Because their purpose was in that work. Okay? You make your purpose about basketball or some sport, at some point, you're gonna get stage 4 chondrosis in your knee. You're gonna have to have a knee replacement. Okay? You're gonna break a leg. What's your purpose then? Okay? A lot of athletes can't play anymore after an injury. Then you know how depressed athletes get when they can't pray? Pray. There's psychiatrists, when they evaluate for depression, there's a series of questions that they have to ask. One of the questions is, do you have a purpose? And I came across this verse in the Quran, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. Everything other than Allah is going to end. And I realized that I was creating a depression in myself by creating a purpose for myself in anything other than pleasing Allah, because that never ends. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Allah never ends, right? وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. I used to say that to myself, oh, it brought me so much joy. It brought me I would think about like, this thing ending and that thing. And in fact, I did this exercise. At that time, Jordan was big. I would close my eyes and I would just imagine Jordan's tombstone. And I would close my eyes, I would just imagine his grave. And it would just like cut me off from any like attachment. Or I would do that with everything. And it would just like cut me off. And it would just like, and then I would read this verse, Allah never dies. And it created a happiness in me. And I started to realize that the more I learned about God, the happier I became. And there's a saying in Arabic, "Man wajada Allah lam yafqud shay'an, wa man faqada Allah lam yajid shay'an." Whoever finds God did not lose anything. Whoever loses God did not find anything. Let me say that again. Whoever finds God did not lose anything. Whoever loses God did not find anything. So the thing that pulled me, coming back to this, was that the purpose, that question, that cosmic itch was answered. And it made so much sense, and it fit, right? Allah created us to worship Him and to know Him. And there's nothing else that will satisfy the heart other than that answer. You cannot put your purpose, you cannot put your why in anything else in the dunya. It will cause depression, And so that's what I realized. If you make your purpose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the side effect will be happiness. If you make your purpose dunya, the side effect will be depression. But again, that was my story. I don't think other people would come into Islam the same kind of way, which is what kind of brings me to the last point, and that is, in order to create a tug and a pull for people to come into Islam, they need, especially now in America, they really need to feel a sense of cultural affinity. Right? And that's one thing that America still does not have. But if everyone just goes off and becomes doctors, it's not going to happen, because doctors don't create culture.
What does cultural affinity mean?
Like, let me give you an example. In the 15th century in China, there was a famous sailor. He was a Hui Muslim. The Hui Muslims in China were, they've been there for like 1,300 years, 1,400 years. They're very authentically Chinese, okay? And they're also Muslim. It's a very famous sailor by the name of Zheng He. I think that was his name, Zheng He, right? He sailed like this battalion of like 30 ships, over 1,000 people, thousands of people under his command. And he went to like 40 different countries. He discovered America before Columbus did. Okay, he brought all kinds of riches, and he was a Muslim. All kinds of riches back to China. He became a cultural hero in China. He's celebrated even till today. But because he was a Muslim, and an open Muslim, right? A proud Muslim, he created a sense of connection between Islam and Chinese culture. A sense of cultural affinity, right? Like Chinese people, they would find closeness to him without having to like get rid of their Chineseness, And so what he did for Islam in China was was massive. What Muhammad Ali did for Islam in America was massive. Okay? He's not a da'i. He's not a scholar. He's just passionate about what he did. And he was very good at what he did. Okay? But he was principled. He was a proud Muslim, and people saw that, right? And when I went to med school at the University of Louisville, I walked down a street called Muhammad Ali Boulevard. Because he was from Louisville, Kentucky, right? The city is so proud of him. His picture is everywhere. And what's his name? Muhammad Ali. Can't get more Muslim than that. Okay? What he did for Islam in America by creating this cultural affinity, right, is way more than what any da'i would ever be able to do. So when we talk about the tug of Islam, okay, some people will find their way to the religion like I did. Allah guides whom He wills, right? But not everyone. Some people need that ambiance, that cultural atmosphere. They need that cultural connection. And if every uncle is telling you need to go become a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, guess what? Doctors, lawyers, and engineers don't make a lot of culture. Okay? People who make video games create culture. Okay? People who produce stories create culture. Poets create culture. Artists create culture. Okay? One thing you gotta understand is that Islam weaves itself into the urf. Okay, the urf, it weaves itself into the cultural fabric of society, right? And when you become really good at something and passionate at something, and it becomes a part of the culture, and you do it in a way that is compatible with Islam, and people see that you're Muslim, you add to that cultural fabric. You put some Islam into that cultural fabric of society. And sometimes that does a lot more to bring people and tug people into the religion than any talk will do, or just trying to convince someone, right? So, Shad just wanted me to talk about like my personal story and what my pull to Islam was. I really dislike talking about myself. But per his, just to honor him, that's why I was doing this today. But maybe we can pause here and have a discussion. I would love people's insights on their experiences of dawah, how they were pulled to Islam, or how they pulled other people towards Islam. If there's anything good that I said, that's by the grace of Allah. Anything bad that I said, that's by my own shortcoming. وانفعنا بما قرأنا وجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. وجزاكم الله خير. I know Saad has something. شيخ تفضل. تعال شيخ، تعال هنا. لا come on. نريد نسمع صوتك يا تعال شيخ. For sure we would like to hear, especially about عرف and تفضل يا شيخ. Please no. He's going to sit here.
No.
Yes.
Sit down. It's okay. Please. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you. And really, Alhamdulillah, I hear your story before. We talked about a lot of it. And this is what's really make a huge difference. My story is very similar, but in a different way. So just to add it so we can,
yes.
I give you time, inshallah, for this. It's not another speech. But the same things. My background, I study, I'm from Tunisia originally. So we have to choose in the middle school what direction you want to go through the baccalaureate. So you have math, science and math, or you have adab, literature, or you have technique. It's industrial, it's related to the So we have three options. For us, alhamdulillah, we started middle school. We accepted Islam as from the culture. I taught my father, my mother how to pray. Me and my brothers and sisters who grew up in the French culture, and alhamdulillah. So all our generations in the masajid, 80% of the young people there, their parents did not pray. We are the first people to start. So we feel like we are convert, the same thing. So we thought about it. We heard that there is in high school they teach philosophy.